I don't take no for an answer when I know I can be the solution. Like if I can find a way to, like I know what you want, I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it, but I'm going to do it from a different approach. Hey everybody, welcome back to the FIP Printing Pros podcast. I'm your host, Josh Dynison, and again with my co-host here, Chris Lockwood. Today, what we got with us, we got Danny Mobley is with us, and he's got two businesses that he's currently working on, and one of them is a podcast and one of them is an app. It's a Humans of Healthcare, and then the other one is Downtime Trace.
Yeah, you got it, man.
Okay,
nice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So why don't you, I guess, you also, my past is, we've talked about this, former police officer.
Yeah.
And why don't you jump into, I guess, sounds like your dad was an officer when you were growing up, and you kind of had that motivation of that's what you kind of wanted to do with your life. Why don't you kind of start us with kind of that, how that all started and everything?
Sure, man. I grew up in Oklahoma, and so my dad, when I was born, was an Oklahoma City police officer. Right?
Okay.
And he was just working the street, kind of did a couple other proactive things. And but I was so young, so it was all about softball and police friends and really tight knit group. And then he went to the Highway Patrol in Oklahoma, and so there's another academy. I remember the academy, right? Because he was gone. That was you go stay and sleep there type thing, know. And it was a long time when you're 7 or 8, right? And so then he went and did the whole Highway Patrol thing, working in the States, small towns. We got moved around to Claremore and Bartlesville and these small places up in the northeast corner. And
you familiar with Grove?
Yeah, very much. So we had
I lived there for 2 years.
Did you really? Yeah. So we were Disney Springs is where we had our place. So we go up to Grand all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Grand Lake.
Yeah, that's our jam, man. It's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, we had a boat and everything. We grew up poor, so to have this, I call it a boat, but it's. We're lucky we had a motor.
Was it a pontoon or not quite to that?
No, not even close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. We're just lucky to have a motor in the thing. Yeah, it was rough, man. But you know how it is. Cops and their salaries. It's you don't make a ton of money, and so
you work for the weekend.
Yeah. He was never there during the. I remember this Christmas. He was always gone, right? And. Part of me now knows it was a way to get out from the extended family and not have to show up.
Sorry, got to work. Yeah, guys on the street.
It was brilliant. Nobody questioned him. He's this 6'5" dude, really stoic, and but so that had played a part in. I didn't know him very well, and growing up around that is stoicism and macho and big and all this stuff. I didn't know him. And we never had male affection. I mean, I don't know how deep you guys want to go into this stuff, but it was all driving me to be curious about who he was and why he was that way. So in my life growing up, I'm man, what's the deal? It seems pretty cool what he's doing. He's having fun. He's got friends. He seemed happy, but I didn't know him very well. And so that's part of what drove me is I wanted to figure out what that was all about. And so I always wanted to be a cop. I didn't want to do anything else. I played baseball, which was cool. I got a scholarship, so I got to go experience that a little bit. But I knew what I wanted to do early on. I'm thankful for that, man. If I wouldn't have had that, I would have probably been, slamming rails and doing all sorts of shit when I was like all my friends were, right? Yeah. But every once in a while I'd smoke weed. I would do, a little bit, but never went all the way because I knew I'm going to get background. I'm going to get, lie detector tested, all that stuff. So I stayed away for that reason. But I got into it, and at 20, I started putting my application out there. Just whoever was hiring, I would go to that city, and it just so happens that New Orleans was hiring at that time, right? You know how it is. Every city has their own process, right? So went through the whole thing. I remember the background investigator came to Oklahoma, where I was living at the time, and talked to my dad, and was "Hey, are you cool with this?" And he's I don't know. It's I don't know anything about your city, but I've heard a lot about New Orleans. And so, it was interesting. But he went ahead and gave me the nod, and, they hired me. And, I was still 20 and a half when I started the academy. And so, I moved down there, and I didn't know anything. I stayed really close to the academy because you had to be there so early and you left so late. But our apartment was in the east, New Orleans east, which is just raggedy. I had no business being out there. I would carry my gun to they had the, what do you call them, the laundry, the apartment complex that I was in.
Oh,
laundry,
yeah.
You know, So I'd have to walk down the stairs, and it was right next to a pond. Well, New Orleans, they got these thing called nutri rats, and they're like that big.
Oh, yeah, giant rats, yeah.
Yeah.
They live in the water. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
They're nutri, and some people eat them. You know, they consider them a delicacy. But I mean, I took my gun because they jump out at you. You know, and I swear I would have shot one had I not gotten in trouble. I didn't want to get in trouble. I was still kind of freaked out because when you're in the academy, like you have to have your shirts pressed it's a lot of work. And I didn't have any money. I couldn't take them to the cleaners. I had to do the brass, all that stuff, and so I went through the whole thing. And you guys know, I mean, the Army and you being a police officer, it was like they did it up, man. They really held us to a high standard. But it was like 4 months in the academy. And they put me out on the street, and I'm like, dude, you got to be crazy. Like, I had to sit behind a desk for 6 weeks because I still wasn't able to carry a gun, but all my friends were out. But that first night was pretty magical. On my 21st birthday, I got to go out and, be with my FTO and, do my thing. And, I was in the 2nd District, which is uptown, and it was great. I had a blast. I loved every ounce of being in New Orleans. But my wife, I got married right before I left. She wanted no part of it. From Oklahoma City, like a complete culture change for her. I'm out there running in the streets, and
of New Orleans, no less.
Right? Yeah. We had no family there. It was just,
You weren't in the Midwest anymore.
No, we weren't. No. And it's like, and there's something to the culture there. Like, I mean, I was a minority, right? I had never been used to that. And in Oklahoma, right, it's like it was completely flipped. And but I never felt more at home than I did living in New Orleans. Like they kiss each other hello and goodbye, and like they just embrace people. So it was a really cool experience. But even through all that, like when we got pregnant, like we're not having a child here, with me. Yeah. And I wasn't a good person back then. I was like different, And I think it had a lot to do with being arrogant and empowered, and thinking I had some sort of authority or whatever. You know how that goes. You're putting like 50-year-old guys in jail, and you're fighting all the time, and your adrenaline's always like through the roof, and you get shot at and you go home, and like you're not going to talk to your wife. You just you go out and hang out and do your thing. So anyway, my marriage didn't last, and a lot of it's probably because of that. But we moved back home for my daughter, and I happened to get lucky. My mom knew somebody who was in the medical equipment world, and they got me a job. I always wanted to go back to being a cop. But by the time that it took for the next academy to come around in my dad's, city, like I had already gotten promoted and was making like at least 3 times more than I ever made as a police officer or would have made in Oklahoma City, right? So it was like this enormous jump up in income for me, and that's kind of where I set the rest of my life was set after that.
An enormous jump in income, a whole lot less dangerous job. At least I would think so.
It was.
I'm sure your wife was. Well, were you still with your wife at that time?
Yeah. So we parted as I was going up in the world. So
gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, again, I kind of got full of myself after I started making some money after a couple of years, and I didn't act right. I mean, I just wasn't a great husband back then. So yeah, it was tough. Because I put myself in these jackpots personally. But I was so successful in my business at the same time, But I had a daughter, and I stayed close to her. It was always like where she was, I stayed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everything else I pretty much screwed up.
I want to ask you this before we move too far past it, because you mentioned wanting to become a police officer, hoping that would help you understand your dad more. Did it help?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I'll say this in jest, like he got away with more than he should have. Because once I dove in, a lot of excuses, you can hide behind some of those excuses. I mean, I saw more stuff than, a lot of people, but, I still think about it, but it's not an excuse to act like a prick.
Yeah.
Right? And so I've thought about that question a lot since I left. Is like, if I could help police officers, it'd be like that. Like, guys, it's not an excuse to go have this chip on your shoulder against the world. It's just not a good idea because you're not gonna help anybody, So anyway, that's kind of what I learned is he had no excuse to act like he did, So or does still. I mean, it's just you retired from that, and so yeah, it was revealing.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fast forward into the 3 times job you're doing. Is that sales? Or what specifically are you doing there?
So I was operations first, just like delivering medical equipment, and it was cool. I mean, like we would be on the front lines. Like if somebody needed a ventilator, that's life support stuff, we'd have to go find it, and like go to Dallas or whatever to pick it up because we didn't have them all the time. Oklahoma's big in respiratory.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would like go down with these respiratory illnesses, and we'd run out of ventilators in the whole community, the whole state. And so we'd have to go figure out where to get them throughout the country. So I'd go pick them up and deliver them as quickly as I could. In the middle of the night, doesn't matter what's going on. You go get them. So it was kind of a logistical thing, really kind of cool to figure out where the equipment was and then getting it to where it needs to go. But then I learned, like from the hospitals, like why they needed the equipment, what the purpose of it was. I learned how the equipment worked, and I'm not really mechanical or technical like that, but it was really helpful to learn and throw myself into even cleaning it. Like, why do you clean it? Because it has an adverse effect if you give somebody staph infection because the equipment carries germs from IV pump to IV pump or bed to bed or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff you learn if and hopefully you're open to learning it and you are connecting it to other things. And just somehow I got good at talking about it, and and I got good at relationship building.
Now and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but you said that Oklahoma is very known for its respiratory issues.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they've got some pretty jacked up seasons there. Like, it's kind of like one day it's super cold, the other day it's hot, but the wind is always blowing.
Yeah.
Dusty. There's got to be just so much dust in there.
Yeah. My grandparents lived in the Dust Bowl. And, there's a lot of people that of their age that still had effects from when they were children and they were inhaling all that dust.
Yeah.
I don't think that's all that had to do with it, but I swear the wind, it changes everything there.
Yeah. I remember my dad telling me, because my dad used to work out West Texas before he passed away, and I know this happened in Oklahoma too. He was in the oil field.
Yeah.
And he said it would be crazy. It'd be a beautiful sunny day. All of a sudden there's this dark cloud coming.
Yep.
And it's dust that just comes and blankets everything, and then right behind it's rain.
Yeah.
So now it's raining mud.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have dust, then mud, and then rain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oklahoma has like the sand dunes there, don't they, or something like that? Or,
They do have some. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I've had some people that love to do the razors and four wheelers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a place in Oklahoma I feel like they
There
go
is.
to.
There is.
Well, they got what's that? Pryor? Is it Pryor, Oklahoma?
Yeah, Pryor. That's just south of Grove.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's that place that shut down. All them people were dying with all the. Was it nickel? Was it nickel and
Like getting poisoned.
Yeah, it's like when you drive through the town, it's a ghost town. It's really, really creepy. It's
Yeah.
right on the border of Oklahoma and Kansas. We used to drive through there when going back and forth from Kansas City to Texas.
Yeah.
And it's a creepy place, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
weird.
They've done some stuff. So.
I was too young when I lived there to really know all that stuff.
How old are you?
I'm 37 now.
Oh, okay.
But when I was there, I was between, I think, 11 and 13. So I was at that age where I didn't really care about to understand geography and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because Pryor's kind of come around. Like they actually have this great festival for music now. Like they it's not. I don't know if it's in Pryor, but it's like right around that area. But man, Grove is beautiful and growing.
My mom and my brother still live there. So
nice.
yeah, so I'll go there from time to time. Actually, I'll be going to Oklahoma City in August. My wife actually has a conference there, so we'll be going there, and then I'll be going to stay with my mom for a couple days.
Oh, cool.
So she'll get to see her and stuff.
That's
so
awesome, Josh, man.
But
great.
yeah.
So cool. I love that place.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. She's her and her husband, they have actually, I can't think of what border it is, but it's a state line gas station.
Okay.
So it's right on the state line, and that's their gas station that they own, and it's super successful.
Oh, nice.
So they've got a nice setup there in Grove where now I haven't been there for a while, but they did have a house right off the lake.
Yeah.
And that was really nice. But I think they've now since then bought property and built a house, and I think they've sold that. So when I go in August, I think there'll be a different place.
Oh,
now.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're like on the Kansas line or the Arkansas?
Well, it's right there by Grove. So.
Miami probably. They got that casino up in Miami now.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's Miami,
Oh, I know Miami.
Seriously?
It's funny. It's spelled Miami.
Exactly.
but they call it Miami.
Yeah, they even have a sign that says AUH Miami. They try to spell it for you.
Yeah. We had Andres on the last episode. He would he would have loved growing up in that area because going to casino is only 18 years old.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, man. And they're no joke.
No.
That's why the Choctaw Nation up there, right?
Yeah.
I've stopped at that casino a time or two.
Yeah, yeah. They got the one. So the one in Oklahoma on the exit 1 coming from Texas, like on I-35, is insane. Like it's the biggest one in the world, they say, like as far as the space. And as many machines as they have, it's huge, but it draws from Dallas. It's the only one that really draws from Dallas, you know. So they're starting to build them along the Texas border right there.
Oh, yeah. They got to take away from Shreveport. And West Monroe and all
Totally,
that.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, we had to. My niece turned 18, and we were like, "Oh, let's go take you to the casino."
Yeah, I know, right? What a trip.
Yeah, we might have got kicked out that night. I'm not gonna.
Nice. Cool, man.
Well, it was like one of those situations where you go to the penny slots and you're you win. We're not rich people, so like you win 10, 15, 20 bucks at a time on a penny slot. We're like, that's huge to us.
Oh
I hit the jackpot. I got $17.
Nice.
And so all of us family were together. We're getting excited
Yelling,
and everything.
yeah.
They come over to us like, how much you winning? And I was like 15, 20 bucks.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, you guys need to tone it
Oh,
down.
wow.
You tell my family to tone it down.
Seriously, man. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty laid back. Don't get me wrong, but my family members.
They'll go, yeah. It's funny, there's nothing else to do there. I mean, really, in Oklahoma, so might as well take, their gambling money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we have OU and now the Thunder, but outside of that, it's like there's not much to do.
Well, before Oklahoma City Thunder got there, there wasn't really.
Yeah.
It was just Oklahoma
Desert,
Sooners,
yeah.
So because I'm from Nebraska, so I same thing. We only have the Huskers and nothing else.
Yeah.
No other sports.
Oh, and I love it, man. I love being a fan in that way. It's like the only way I know.
Yeah.
Nothing else. That's all you got.
I mean, I guess you got OSU too. That was pretty good.
They don't matter.
But I mean, most people are Sooners fans. So
I don't like either one of them, but that's all right. But anyway.
Yeah, right. We all hate Texas.
Hook 'em
so
horns.
it's all good.
yeah.
Nice.
Go Gators.
Oh man, there we go. Yeah.
So you're doing operations. You're finding the medical equipment. Then they move you to what? What happens after that?
Yeah, so I just I got a title work, and they had this territory open up in eastern Oklahoma. So like Tulsa was the hub, but Tulsa's like north, right? You know, so the whole half of the state, they're like, we're going to try to grow in that area. So you can take your operations, but we're going to call you a salesperson. And it was a real like legitimate promotion, And so I'm like, okay, yeah, of course. And then that's when they're like, all right, we're going to pay you this, and you can make commission on top of it. And it was like I went from $45,000 a year to $80,000, and I was in hog heaven, man. Like this is all the money in the world at the time. I grew up without, so it's like.
Well, this is what year?
God, this would be 2005.
Oh, so that's a lot of money back in 2005.
Yeah, it was, especially to me.
Yeah.
Because when I was in New Orleans, we made $24,000. And then we had to buy
That's
our
crazy
own
to
leather
think
gear
about.
too. I mean, it was insane. They gave us a gun and a badge, and and we had to buy our uniform, everything. So it was like
That's crazy. New Orleans, of all places, and you're only making $24,000
I know.
as a cop.
I know. It's
Putting your
awful.
life at risk every night.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
They were arresting guys that were protecting drug dealers. Like our cops were going to jail for doing stuff like that. They were just trying to make money, and they were bad guys. But yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, I made some money, and it's like your world. You see the world differently through that lens, and I started like this is cool, and I wanted more. I was always wanted more. But I didn't push it. I don't know why. I just took sales it was like I never felt like I was selling. I was just making relationships with people. And I got really lucky because in eastern Oklahoma, it was like a throwaway territory for this company that I worked for. They're about $120 million in total revenue. And they didn't care. I couldn't really mess it up, which is perfect for me. And so I got to go out and just kind of learn and make mistakes. And the failure was awesome. But the people who I was failing with were like CEOs of small hospitals. And to this day, I mean, what I do at Humans of Healthcare, I mean, it was called Helping Healthcare Executives before it was called Humans of Healthcare. And I try to pay it forward for what they did. I still don't understand why they did it, but I'm trying to pay it forward. And there's a lot of good ones out there, but they're getting killed right now in the world. Like people despise healthcare executives, CEOs, people like that. You should see my TikTok feed. It's like,
I can imagine.
They just kill them. they blame them for everything that's so bad in healthcare. But, I know them differently. Like, they're good people who poured into me, and they've always been there for me, no matter what I've done. They've just been, right there waiting to help me. So, like, I do everything I can to tell stories that are good about what they're doing, but they're all just like us. I mean, they got the same hearts. They got, I don't know, they're just the same, and a little bit even better in some cases. There's bad ones, but
100%. Every industry has the bad apples.
yeah, exactly. Like, there were the cops that were
Yeah.
bad ones, and Andrew asked me a question on a podcast. He has a badass podcast, and he said, "What do you think about doctors? Like, what's your opinion about them being in it for the right reasons and being good people?" And my answer surprised him. I said, I think about 95% of them are in it for the right reasons and are good doctors. They just kind of lose themselves sometimes along the way.
Yeah.
They get burned out, whatever reason, And the same goes with these hospital CEOs. I mean, they're on an island, they're isolated, bad media, people always coming at you. You're never going to be right no matter what you do. It's a thankless thing. So, I'm just really appreciative for what they did for me. And now I'm friends with doctors a lot too. So, like, my investors in my companies are physicians, so I've gotten to see that side of the world too, and I think they're great.
I think when you think about it, just like with law enforcement, they deal with humanity at the worst possible time.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody goes to the doctor because they feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's in the hospital for a surgery because I guess some people go in there trying to make themselves more perfect, but
Right.
you don't.
a different type of doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't. You don't see that, and I think one of the things, especially with the executive level, like, they have to make decisions a lot of times strictly based on numbers.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's the way it's perceived from people like me that just sees it from the outside.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't see the having to make that decision. In essence, sometimes who lives and who dies.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
right.
And whether you're on like the transport or transplant board, or like you were going around finding this medical equipment. If you got two people and you only have one machine, how do you make that decision?
Yeah.
And I think that's what people see, and so that's one side of it. The other side of it, I think, is we're so happy in this country
Yeah.
that it kind of makes it hard to care
Yeah.
in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's tough, man. They're in a jackpot, like you said, and they it doesn't matter what decision they make, they're going to get ridiculed for it, and it's just like, again, I don't know, my energy gets drained when people come at me like that, and they're no different. So but to your point, I mean, the money's driving everything. That's become apparent to me. I've interviewed a lot of these people, healthcare executives, clinicians, people who are mad at them, people who are patients, That's kind of what we do on Humans of Healthcare, is just give stories, and they tell their stories how they are.
Yep.
It's so funny, you can get two people in the room that are very similar, and they'll have completely different stories and points of view on the topic we're hitting on, but they all know that money drives it. At a hospital manager, an owner, actually, she owns hospitals. Her company manages and owns hospitals. She was on my podcast recently. Her name's Michelle. Her daughter is a physician, just graduated from residency, right? So she's fully a doctor. She's on the spectrum a little bit. She's got some autism, but she's brilliant. She scored perfect on her ACTs. She graduated from a really prestigious, medical school and everything. She got into her role, and they just steamrolled her. Like, within 5 weeks, she left. And my daughter's a nurse, had the same experience. Like, they're getting into these situations where everything is so backed up, and there's so much and so few resources, so few doctors, so few nurses, that they're having to kind of go into the fire. And I look at it like this. Like, I said this the other day. Somebody asked me what it was like, and it's like, well, they're throwing you in the deep end, and you're treading, and they're sitting there judging you how you tread water. That's kind of what it feels like to the clinicians, in that case.
While putting weights in your pocket.
Exactly.
Pushing you down.
That's right. Yeah. That's how they feel, and it's like, it was really vivid in this situation that Michelle's going through is, it's awful. I mean, her daughter's 30 and she wants to stop being a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, that's real. And our Becker Healthcare is a major publication in our space. And when I talk to him, his biggest thing for us is, lack of clinicians. We have a doctor shortage that's at crisis levels. Nobody's really talking about that. And there's not enough to replenish the ones that are, going out of the field. And they're going out of the field at an alarming rate. This is an absolute crisis. It's causing hospitals to close. It's causing delays in care. My dad, for example, is a diabetic. He's 70 or whatever. So he's he's going through some tough times, and he needs a endocrinologist for his diabetes, and then he needs to see a podiatrist now because he's got a problem with his foot, right? Mm-hmm. And it took like a month for him to get into the podiatrist, and in the meantime, he could literally amputate his foot if he doesn't get this thing seen, and it takes a month to get in for that. So people flood the emergency rooms because they can't. This, it's just compounding, and we're seeing it every day. We're tolerating it, and there's so much going on behind the scenes that people don't know. We're trying to bring those stories out so people can realize that, man, it's a crisis.
So do you, obviously you're talking the human side of the doctors, nurses, and the healthcare side of things, that, some people pin them as bad people just out for the money and whatever. I guess my thought process, I have a different, my background being a police officer, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I was at the ER a lot of times, for different reasons, with people that I, had to deal with. And so I got to see the other side of just, like you're talking and see the human side behind the nurses and the doctors, and how there's a lot of good people in that health, and most of them, and also because we also, like he mentioned, that we see the worst side of people most of the time and have to see the life-to-death situations. Most of my friends were in the healthcare industry and police officers and, very similar fields. Yeah. And so I definitely see that. But my question is, because this is the side I didn't really see, and you probably know a little bit more than I do. Do you feel that's more insurance level side of things that causes a lot of these issues, that rather than the hospitals or doctors themselves?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, it's a complex problem. I mean, and I think if you get 5 people up here, you get 5 different answers.
Yeah.
Certainly, insurance and what they're willing to pay is a big driver. They got to get permission to perform certain procedures, and there are bad actors who are gaming the system. But it's just you got to be able to survive, and money's the way you survive, right? So they do. Yeah. They do take how they're going to get paid into account when they make decisions on your care, And we had an instance, for example, recently where a guy who's like your age, he went in for a procedure and he needed a heart transplant. This went viral on LinkedIn, and he told his story. And one of my friends was helpful in getting his story out to the world. And Mark Cuban replied, and it had to do with Anthem, the Blue Cross Blue Shield. It used to be Blue Cross. I don't want to implicate them, but this insurance company called Anthem. And so, Mark came on and he's like, I think he said, he's like, fuck them, and offered to pay for the guy's treatment. It was a powerful story. This guy, he had just had a baby, a lot of really cool circumstances, but yeah, it was tough. And but he didn't go fight Anthem. Mark didn't. It turned out that some good Samaritan in Dallas, coincidentally, was he stepped up and had some friends at Anthem and had some influence somehow. So ended up helping, but remained sort of nameless, right?
Gotcha.
Right. So it's just those stories are out there. They're kind of everywhere if you look for them, how insurance impacted the outcome, or could have, and had a bad effect. If he wouldn't have gotten approved, he couldn't have gotten the heart transplant. Yeah. He definitely would have died. But he's still around because they've got that heart transplant. So there's so many good stories out there, like that paint the vivid picture. It's just what are we gonna do about it? Nobody seems to have the right answers.
Well, let's bring this back to the business side.
Sure.
Of it. So you got Humans for Healthcare.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how that started and what that business is doing now.
Yeah. So there's this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. That's out there in the pod.
Gary V.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that guy. I just happened upon him, right? And he did a challenge. He was doing a keynote speech in front of lawyers or real estate agents, and he's like, hey, you guys are hooting and hollering right now, but 97% of you will leave here and not do anything that we talked about.
Yep.
And I was like, I saw that a couple of times. And then I also saw him do some pretty cool content. And so I was kind of bought in. I'm like, I'm not going to be that 97%. So one day I just kind of got on video on my phone in my bedroom. And I was like, all right, this is for my, like my future self, right? If I have grandkids or whatever, I want them to be able to see me at 45 years old, like in my element and, see who I am. So I put it out there as my first one. I got some affirmation, got some likes, whatever, and then I did another one, just started kind of doing more and more. And then I started doing interviews. I had friends come in, and one of my interviews hit, like hundreds of thousands of people watched it, and I'm like, oh my God, because my phone was just binging the whole weekend. It was on TikTok and all things. I didn't even really have TikTok on my phone, but I had a great friend who was helping me. She kind of was side hustling. She's a Gen Zer, so she knows social media. She was working at this firm, right? But yeah, she helped me, and I paid her on the side for it. But we created this thing together, and got the brand going, and it was really cool. And so eventually, I turned it into a business, started an LLC, and I started talking to some friends, and I always reached high for my interviews, right? Because I was audacious like that. I didn't feel like there's anybody I couldn't get to, and so I'd just make these calls to people and say, hey, can you be on? And they'd be like, sure. And, it takes some time to get them on, but when I did, I would get some good feedback, and it'd be cool to have somebody sitting like celebrities to me, it's awesome. Yeah. And then, so I just got to make friends. I built the network or whatever. And then I had some friends that were like, hey, I'm doing this too, but I really hate this part. And they started explaining to me, and then a hospital started explaining to me what they're trying to do. So I had a hospital customer all of a sudden, helping a hospital do what we were doing, which is do interviews and then take clips and post those clips and create accounts and do all the little account stuff, where you put graphics on these, like a TikTok page or whatever. Yeah. They just did that for them because they were intimidated by it and they didn't have time or resources or whatever. I did a lot for free for a while. And then, one guy's like, hey, I'll pay you for this. I just hate doing it. I hate promoting it. I hate keeping track of it. I'm not very good at it. So I'm like, all right. So we did. And then that led to a big one recently. Humans Healthcare just got a big account, and it's coming out in the next month, this content, but it's for a charity called Build a Brain, Build a Life, Build a Community. And we're really excited about helping them. And it's in healthcare. It's for children 0 to 3, and it's about spoken words in the home and how impactful screen time is. And they're trying to educate mothers, grandparents, fathers on how to help raise kids in today's environment. So it's really exciting sort of stuff, and backed by a guy who's a superstar, a guy named Quinn Studer. He's really amazing. So yeah, so that's been cool. And yeah, it's just kind of, we're seeing where it goes. I'm not pushing it really hard, but it's kind of coming to us.
So what do you do on the business side of things? So you recorded the video saying, okay, I'm not going to be part of that 97%.
Yeah.
But what's your role in the business?
So, I do a lot. I get the interviews, for Humans of Healthcare and the podcast side. I get the interviews. I host the interviews. We should have some correspondents out there. They're going to be doing, some stuff for us too, like going out and doing podcasts on their own under our brand. So yeah, we're doing that. But then we facilitate getting the videos to the editors and making sure that everything gets done, and we post it and all that stuff. I'm just kind of overseeing that, but I don't get too deep into the weeds. I have people that work for me, so to speak, and fractional help and all that stuff. But yeah, we just kind of make it happen with the people we got, and we get sponsors every once in a while, so we make enough to keep afloat. But yeah, we're not making a killing. It's just it's enough to have fun and do some stuff. But Humans Healthcare, I just get interviews and do this. What you guys are doing?
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. We just did an episode not too long ago about the reason businesses fail.
Oh,
and you've already taken care of 3 of the reasons why they fail. Number 1, not getting started. You did that.
Yeah.
Number 2, outsourcing.
Right.
And finding the people.
The experts
to do that,
Yeah.
and then the sales part, just reaching out, just I don't even know if I want to call it sales anymore. Just the
Yeah.
relationship. building.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Yeah, I'm deathly afraid of being that douchey sales guy. I always have been, you know?
that's why I don't have the last job I
Yeah.
had, because I didn't want to be that.
Yeah.
That sales guy. I hated it.
Yeah, people don't like it. when
Well,
you-
I was just having a conversation with one of my my employees, and because I there's a particular job that it's a top customer. I won't even say their name, but it's a, let's just say it's a very high profile casino, and I'm gonna possibly be printing for them, but I've been told no originally a couple different times. And I always keep going back into them, like, what about this? Could we make this work and do it this way? And then it ends up being a no. But again, I'm not pushy.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm being a pushy salesman. I'm building that relationship, and I'm trying to come up with solutions.
Yeah.
And because I know what their end goal is, I know what they want, and I'm trying to figure out how I can be that person to make that work for them and
Right.
be their go-to to get this done. And now I can be the one to say I do their printing for them.
Exactly. What a feeling, right?
Yeah, no, just that alone, but it's the relationship that I'm with this person.
Yeah.
It's not I'm being that annoying guy. Like, hey, you want to buy this thing for me? Hey, oh yeah, I got this
Notice
too.
you have a
I
roof,
noticed-
you need solar panels.
Yeah, you know, it's not like
Yeah.
it's more so just that like conversational. Like, hey, I know this is what you want. You know, what about this? You know, just like it's all about the
Yeah.
relationships and like your tonality, like how you approach it, like everything. I think that's where a lot of people in sales go wrong. They just
Yeah.
try to be too much.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, I don't take no for an answer when I know I can be the solution.
Yeah.
Like if I can find a way to, like I know what you want, I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it, but I'm going to do it from a different approach
Sure.
than just being salesy.
Yeah.
But when I don't know, you know, if I know I can't be their solution, then I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
not going to keep pushing.
Right.
Like that's where I think the difference is.
Yeah.
Is if I know I can't be your solution and I'm still trying to push, now you're getting to the pushy salesman side of
Yeah, man.
things.
Like I've been trained to the hilt with this stuff through the years. People spend a lot of money to put my brain through these different trainings, right? Like professional sales trainings and all this stuff. And one of the things that there's only a few things that I still carry with me from all those trainings, and one of them is what you just described. Like, you don't have anything to lose. Like, a lot of salespeople are going in like they think they have something to lose.
Yeah.
When you haven't won anything yet. You know, you reach milestones, right, in the sales process, but you really haven't won anything. So the more you act like you're going to lose something and you show desperation, the more you're going to, you know,
Exactly.
you're going to get kind of like people are going to stay away from it. It's kind of you turn into the douchey guy.
Yep.
So I was an Army recruiter for 19 years.
Oh, nice.
And that's what I used to tell these kids when they would come and be like, listen, I already made my decision.
Yeah.
I'm locked in.
Yeah.
So if you don't join, look, it ain't gonna hurt me one
No
way or
sweat
the
off my
other.
back.
I like that.
So
I like that.
you do what you got to do, but
Yeah.
you know I'm already locked in.
Yeah.
And it sets the tone. It's such a completely different conversation
Totally.
because you know I'm not in it for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I did high ticket sales for real estate coaching, and I would tell those guys the same thing. I'm like, look, I'm not here to convince you to join.
Yeah.
I'm here to see if I want you in the program.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And you know, I could talk you into giving me the money, but that doesn't mean I really want to coach you.
Yeah.
You know, and immediately changes the conversation.
Totally. Yeah.
Because now you're trying to convince me. Let me give you some money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't know if I want your money.
Yeah.
But but you know, and there were people I would tell, and I'd be like, well, like, oh, I can do it right now. I'm like, it ain't right for you right now.
Yeah.
It's not the
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
So,
totally, man. That's a great tactics. I mean, like I always looked at it like a triangle. The success triangle is, you know, behaviors, attitude, behavior, and technique. You know, and the technique part you can learn. It just, you know, then you got to practice it and do all the stuff. But yeah, some of the best stuff I did was reversing and, you know, having them chase me a little bit, you know. But I tell my team right now, like, don't get in the chase. If you're chasing, you know, it's really hard to come from behind if you feel like you got to chase somebody to get them to follow up, or if they're running from you and they owe you an answer and all, like really tough positions. The most thing I'm thankful for is that I'm not scared of no, You know, I'm not scared of rejection. Like you, I'll just keep coming. I mean, I'm resilient. I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
You know, if I feel like it's a good fit, we got a good relationship, I won't stop. I'll just find a different route to try to get there.
Yep.
And I don't have anything to lose, right? And so it's like, that helps. There's a lot of engineers I work with that are like, they try to get really technical. They try to
Dazzle me with your
explain.
brilliance.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And it's hurting them, and they know it is, and they're scared to death of the stuff that we were talking about, like, because it doesn't come natural to them. But I wouldn't engineer. I wouldn't try to engineer. You know, I feel like I'd screw something up. I think they feel the same in the reverse. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's.
I don't
tough
need to
on
know how the clock works. I just need you to tell me what time it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Speaking of clock, so you got another business. We got an app.
Yeah, I'm excited about that, man. It's the first time I've ever gotten to a business and had to raise money. So I've never done that before, and it's been a great success. I just went and asked people, hey, can I have some money? And this is what I'm trying to do. I built a little business plan or whatever, and it's the asking part that was, the hardest thing for me to overcome. And they said yes, and so I got money, and we outsourced a lot. My brother and I are co-founders of this thing, so it's great. We both come from the same field, so we have a little niche, right? There's this medical equipment service thing that I've done for 24 years now, and we know the business really well. And we've just basically said, all right, whatever people are doing in their personal lives when they buy these days through an app, like, that's acceptable now, right? They expect it. Like TaskRabbit, I love that. Like, you have Angie's List, you have Uber. We kind of liken ourselves more to Uber than anything, it seems like, because of the way they changed the taxi industry, and the transportation world is kind of like our industry is right now. And a lot of the same attributes, like you have to call down the yellow pages to get a taxi back in the day, right? And you never knew, like, they answered the phone. I remember the taxi people at this taxi stand would be like, yeah, we'll send somebody out, and that's all you got.
Yeah.
And hang up the phone, you're like, well, who's coming, when
When,
when are they on their way, how much is it going to cost? What, like, you didn't know who was going to show up. Like, think about what Uber did, and that's kind of how the industry in medical equipment does it right now, or plumbing or HVAC or whatever. So it's like all the trade services that kind of have that thing going on, like the old taxis did. So we brought the Uber-like technology to the table, right? And so it's really, we're bringing also gig economy. Like, we don't have gig technicians right now in our space. They all work for companies. So we want to have this gig economy for the technicians to get connected to the jobs. And this is high-end stuff, like MRIs and CT scanners, all the x-ray equipment, everything. So, and it's only x-ray equipment right now. But yeah, man, it's a crazy thing to think that somebody could have done this any time over the past like 20 years or 10 years, because that's when technology. But it's like nobody did it. So we're like, okay, we'll do it. And
So y'all's app connects what with what?
so it connects medical equipment service with medical equipment service technicians. The need, so the demand is the fact that a piece of equipment breaks, and then we have the technicians who are the actual supply. So they come in, service, and repair it, right? So that the technology just says, okay, if this CT scanner breaks, we've got this list of people over here signed up for the app that can service it. And it's, in our world, it's like make and model based. You can't just say, I know CT. It's got to be GE, Siemens, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that algorithm to match specific to the skill set is really important. And so, yeah, they just say, okay, my equipment's broken. They blast out the need. Everybody who can work on it responds with a bid. I can be there in this amount of time. Here's how much I'll charge you. And here's my star rating. We don't have star ratings in our world either right now. So that's kind of introducing something that makes a lot of sense.
Are you more local based, or like, is it
national?
National?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We tried to start in Texas, where we have really good relationships with hospitals and imaging centers and actual service providers. But it's like we've been already drawn into the national scene because of the way that the industry's set up. It's just really hard to stay local.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're national.
And then you take like a cut of like whatever the matching is,
yeah,
basically.
man. Yeah, so like the fees, like Uber, that's exactly, and it's all transparent. So the hospitals pay through the app, and we pay out to the vendors or service providers, as we call them, and we pay within like 48 hours. Right. Right now, if you were to go do a job at a hospital, it'd take
Be longer
120
than that.
days to get paid. Right.
Well, MRI machines, they never work.
Yeah.
I think
Seriously, right?
you had an appointment tomorrow. Our MRI machine's down.
Yeah. So
I might have to
stat.
connect you to my father-in-law.
Oh, really?
He actually has a business where they actually work on cancer machines. I don't know what the technical word for that
Sure.
is, but they're
PET
all
CT?
the different machines that they have to use for different
Sure.
cancer treatments and things
Sure.
like that. And he travels to New York to wherever, like his team goes pretty much wherever the job
Oh,
needs
that's
to go.
cool.
Yeah.
You know the name of his company?
You would ask me that.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll talk after this.
Okay.
I'll get it for
Sure,
you. But
It's a small
definitely,
world.
it's kind of cool that
Yeah.
you have this type of app because he's trying to learn how to kind of get into more of the updated, they're trying to get on social media and different things
Yeah.
like that. So,
Oh, yeah.
we'll have to get after this, and I'll give you his
Yeah, man.
information.
And I can't imagine there's a whole ton of people with the expertise
No, there's
to do that.
It's a dying field.
5,000-ish in the country that can work on imaging equipment.
Wow.
There's 50,000 biomeds that can work on the smaller stuff, the IV pumps, the beds, the stuff that's movable, but imaging people, like they're a dying breed. It's like the clinicians. It's like everywhere because we've gone outside of healthcare already. Like we're doing electrical contracting, plumbing, and HVAC, right? So outside of healthcare. And we're finding that the same problems exist in those industries as does in the medical equipment service. But what they all like is that, because they're all kind of introverted by their nature with the trades, right? So they don't like to sell, and if we can just deliver jobs to their phones, right, and that they're qualified to work on these things. And what started my brother was actually, he's in the industry. He was running a hospital. They call it the biomed department. He was running the biomed department in Oklahoma City at a small hospital. And he was also working at Marco's delivering pizzas to make ends meet in the evenings, right? One day, the sterilization department, which is in the OR, that sterilizes all the equipment, the instruments and things like that, it broke. And he had the skill set to work on it. And the hospital called out to the manufacturer, which is called Steris, paid thousands per hour to have them come out, and the whole job was just a mess. It was kind of an awful experience. He had the skill set. They'd have called him. He'd have happily gone in for $100 an hour, right, versus the 1,000 that they paid per hour. And like imaging equipment right now, if you call in after hours, they're charging you $1,500 an hour. Like, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
You
And
might be in the wrong business.
you are. And anybody can get into this. Like, there's no barrier to entry. You don't have to go to like college. I mean, if you have some, I don't know, electrical background or whatever, but I got into it. I was a cop, like anybody can get into it and it pays really well. The average salary, if you work for a company, is like $50, $60 an hour is what you'll make. So, and it's fun, you're like doing something that's kind of interesting and on the cutting edge, so to speak. But it's also impactful. Here's a stat that when I was raising money, I had to find a way to talk to people who didn't know our business. And they'd say, why is this important? And I'd be like, well, hospitals lose $8,000 per minute when their machines break, their imaging machines, per minute, which is more expensive than the most expensive aircraft that the Air Force maintains, that it costs to run, the stealth bombers, right? It's like, $480,000 an hour they lose whenever these things break. So the urgency to get somebody there fast, right? And to think that there wasn't an app like this before, to think you were calling down a list, waiting 30 minutes for somebody to call you back, just for them to tell you whether they could be there or not.
Yeah.
Human nature is like, all right, I'm going to choose the one that can get here, that answers and calls me back and says they can come. They stop calling. They don't keep finding service options. They just say, okay, come do my stuff. Come repair me, right? Get me back up. So, yeah, we're like, we know we're onto something. It's like the market's already accepted what we're, putting out. So we're really excited about where it could go. And, I'm just,
Not to mention the cost of the hospital, but just the cost of human life.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's like, I mean, you can't even put a figure on that, but it's
Nope.
like, what if it was your kid
Yeah.
who needed this X-ray or this CT scan and they can't because Joe won't get out of the, doesn't want to get out of his jammies
Yep.
to come work on this piece of equipment.
Oh yeah, it happens, man. And they're paying,
Yeah.
they're paying so much, and the hospitals are. But that's what happens is the frustration with the staff and the patients is what drives a lot of this stuff. Like if they tell stories of cancer patients that are driving 200 miles to get a PET CT, and it's like they're anxious, right? And then you get there and the equipment's broken. They got to go back home and reschedule, and all the patients for that day, because it takes days now to get them repaired. The urgency level's gone down in our world, since COVID, it seems like. But yeah, it's a mess, man. So we're just trying to connect as quickly as possible their need for repair with anybody who's out there. I've had people, department managers at small hospitals say to me, hey, when I'm down and my equipment's broken, like I just want everybody in the world to know, just for that chance that somebody could come out and fix it, right?
That's great. Who was the guy? We were in a mastermind last year. Automotive stuff.
Okay.
He was building an app very similar to what you're talking
Really?
about, but for cars. And it like you're mentioning it, I'm like, I would have never even thought of that. But he's building an app that you plug the device into your car, and whatever the code is, it connects to the app and says, here are the mechanics in your area that specialize in fixing this thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And it I don't know if it exists now, but it just.
He was still, it was
Yeah.
in the development
That's
side
beautiful.
of things, but
Yeah, that
that's
does
crazy.
a lot of what we're saying, because what we're blasting out to these folks is important. Like the way you send out what your problem is, your repair need, is based off of codes that the machine's spitting out, right? And so you do your best when you're a radiology technologist running this equipment to share whatever you can. But so we incorporated video. Just show us what you're seeing, and that was because speaking of auto, when I went to take my car in to be repaired, I don't know, it was about 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I got a text whenever the auto mechanic started working on it. He was walking under the chassis, and he's like, has his phone pointed at what he's looking at, and he's telling me, he's like, okay, your tires are at this much tread, and I got that over video, and it just made a world of difference for me as a consumer, right, to get a video of what he's seeing and what his plans were to fix whatever my ailment was, right? That was huge. So we incorporated that too. So like whenever a technician comes out and diagnoses what's going on with your equipment, they're doing it all over video and sending that back to the people who are at the hospital that need to know this information, right? So, I mean, to your point, it's
Yeah,
like,
that's cool.
that's really good information to have.
That's one of the things that we're working on for FIP is just notifying people where their job is at in the process. Hey, your stuff is being printed right now.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And do they really need to know that? No. But I love when I'm sitting there and I order a pizza, my kids are like, when's the pizza going to be here? And I'm like, it's in the oven right now.
Yeah.
And look, here's the little car coming down the street.
The Domino's app was a big motivator
Yeah.
for us. It really was. I love the simplicity of that. The pizza tracker.
Yep.
I've
Yeah.
used that in some of my materials for marketing, just because it's a vivid picture.
Yeah.
But people buy like that now. They expect that. They expect to know where your car is when you're Uber. Like it's 1 minute away, and you're like, man, it's actually been 3 minutes, and it said it was 1 minute away. Like we get that, worked up about it these days.
He just drove right past where
I
I'm
know,
at.
right?
Hey, where are you going?
That's exactly right. Now we got the map in our thing too, like because that's one of the things is our technicians are really, they're hard on people because they don't communicate like what they're doing. We've had instances where technicians would come and repair something and nobody would even know that they were there. So in our app, you can't move to the next screen if you're a technician until you satisfy, I'm on my way, I've arrived. You have to let people know, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and because it's like that's just human nature these days. They're so used to it, like they get upset if they don't know, and our industry is just really bad. So we found a niche, man. It's just kind of what
that's awesome.
one of
Man.
those things. Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, I didn't know everything about your business, and now I'm even more excited now because I feel
Cool.
like I can maybe connect you with my father-in-law
Yeah,
with his business.
that's
and
awesome, man.
So we'll have to after this, we're gonna have to exchange information on that, and
It's great.
no, man, everything you've been accomplished and everything, it sounds super awesome.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for coming and being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
And so if you guys have any of these type of needs, make sure to come see Danny Mobley.
Thanks, man.
I got it right this
Yeah,
time.
you did great. Yeah.
Hey, and I think the key, something I want to highlight one more time is, it's 2025. Technology is huge, but there's still so many things that aren't done.
Yep.
Yeah.
And no matter what your niche is or your there's still opportunity. There's so many opportunities out there.
Yeah.
You just got to take that first step.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I love that.
that's
You said that, Chris. Like people have very specific things that they have knowledge about, and we just rode coattails. The main part of our app already existed. It's the fact that society accepted, the buying behaviors.
Yeah.
And then our little niche piece was always sort of added to it, and we developed in India. I mean, we did we never developed an app before. My brother just kind of lined out the screens and did a flow chart, you know, and we had a business plan, raised some money. Not that easy, but it's like,
Yeah.
it can be, you know, like, think about it. But I love what you said. Anybody can do this. I promise if I can, anybody can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yep. Anybody can do it. You just got to actually take the action to make it happen.
That's right.
That's the biggest thing.
That's right.
And again, appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah. My pleasure.
And like, subscribe, and get a hold of Danny if you need anything. Like, comment in the comments, and we can connect you with him.
Yeah.
No problem. And again, until next time, let's grow together.
It's time to step up, yeah. It's grind time, no more letting up. No, running faster, further, no more running up. Yeah, giving my all.